Last time we met, I talked about Philippians 1, the notion that God is working within our lives and working toward a harvest of righteousness, that we can be grateful that God is present and giving us guidance each step of the way, and that God has a vision, a long-term vision for history and for our personal lives, that the moral and spiritual arcs of history aim toward justice and fulfillment and healing. In the second chapter of Philippians, and I talk about this in my book, Philippians, a Participatory Study, Paul talks about having the mind of Christ. What does it mean to have the mind of Christ? A friend of mine sees this as a Christian koan, as something we repeat over and over again, never quite fully sure what it means, but as a lure for feeling to transform our lives and our behaviors. Have the mind of Christ. Certainly in Philippians, the mind of Christ is the presence of God and Jesus Christ, who does not lord it over anyone, who is not separate from anyone, but who is God with us, feeling our pain, sharing our struggles, even sharing suffering and death with us. Surely those who first encountered Paul's letter to Philippians were struck by the difference between the mind of Christ, the kenosis, the self-emptying, the letting go, and the power of Caesar. Bernard Loomer talks about two kinds of power. The first is unilateral. Unilateral power acts and doesn't listen. Unilateral power controls but does not receive. Unilateral power determines but does not allow itself to be shaped by the world. In contrast, relational power sees the well-being of others as its primary goal. It sees connection as significant. It receives as well as gives. It responds as well as creates. It is one of us. God is, as Whitehead says, the fellow sufferer who understands. And as Bonhoeffer continues, only a suffering God can save us. At the name of Jesus, at the name of Christ, every knee shall bow. This is not the knee of fear. That is not the knee of obedience. It's the knee of love and responsiveness to God's great love for us. Have the mind of Christ, that is one of us, that loves us, that shares our suffering, that is empathetic, that lures us forward with the moral and spiritual arcs of history and calls us to be God's companions in healing the world. That's Philippians' message today. May you be blessed.